Name of Dr. Russel Norman.
Mr. Speaker.
Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Transport and asks, what Auckland public transport projects will be delayed as a result of the government's transport funding announcements last week?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, the electrification of Auckland's commuter rail network, which is far and away the largest public transport project in that city, remains on track for 2013. In regards to the smaller projects, I and my officials are working hard with Auckland officials to ensure that momentum is not lost on the important public transport initiatives in Auckland.
Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister of Transport, does he realise that by cutting the guaranteed funding for Auckland's public transport upgrades, he's thrown into jeopardy integrated ticketing, new and upgraded train and bus stations, ferry wharf upgrades and real-time information for buses, trains and ferries, all of which are essential to make the network operate successfully?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, no, I don't believe I've placed those in jeopardy. Officials are walking through a process with the ARC and ARTA. The ARC has a total of $80 million of its own funds committed to those projects, and we look forward to working constructively with them in the coming weeks.
Dr. Jackie Blue.
What commitments has the government made to Auckland public transport?
Did the Minister hear that satisfactorily? I just invite the Honourable Member to repeat it because I don't think the microphones were picking it up properly. Dr. Jackie Blue.
Mr. Speaker. To the Minister, what commitments has the government made to Auckland public transport?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable
The
Stephen
government
Joyce
has committed to public transport infrastructure upgrades in Auckland, including the double tracking currently underway in Auckland, costing $600 million, signal and track upgrades and electricity upgrades through on-track worth $500 million, as well as the purchase of electric rolling stock worth another $500 million. These projects represent a very sizable commitment, as the Finance Minister confirms, to passenger transport users in Auckland.
Keith Locke.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker. How does the Minister answer the article in the New Zealand Herald that says that there will be delays in integrated ticketing, and how will an Aucklander who wants to escape traffic gridlock and get to work quickly, how will they do so if they can't easily transfer between buses, trains and ferries on a single ticket, due to the government's half plan announced for Auckland last week?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, I don't expect they'll be wanting to ride on an integrated ticket. Integrated ticketing is currently subject to a funding decision from NZTA. The only comment I would add is that while integrated ticketing is important, some rather painfully expensive international experiences shows you that it does need to be done at the right time, and it is important that fare structures and services are simplified before you start paying the hourly rates of the IT guys.
The Honourable Darren Hughes.
Does the Minister know when the successful tender for integrated ticketing in Auckland, for Auckland's public transport will be announced? And when do tenders, which were called last year, lapse?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, no, I don't know. That's subject to a decision by the New Zealand Transport Agency.
Dr. Russel Norman.
Mr. Speaker, how will an Aucklander who wants to escape gridlock get to work when new and upgraded train and bus stations at Newmarket, New Lynn, Parnell, Morningside and Onehunga now hang in the balance due to the government's half plan for Auckland public transport announced last week?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, the member is well ahead of himself. The officials of NZTA, the Ministry of Transport, also the senior staff of Kiwi Rail, ARTA and the ARC are all working together pretty much as we speak to ensure that the projects that are underway continue.
Keith Locke.
Thank you. Surely the fact that the Minister is talking with these agencies does not override the fact that there are delays taking place. And to repeat the question of my co-leader here, how will an Aucklander who wants to escape traffic gridlock and get to work easily be inspired to do so if there are hold-ups in revamping 10 ferries and the provision of better real-time information for buses, ferries and trains, now that they hang in the balance due to the government's half plan for Auckland?
The Hon STEVEN JOYCE.
Last week.
Mr Speaker, the answer to that question is the same as the answer to the previous one, which is the officials involved are working together to ensure no unnecessary delays.
Dr Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Does the Minister agree with the previous Minister of Transport, the Honourable Maurice Williamson, and who said, and I quote, "It's also important to realise that throwing dollars at the problem of roads is not the answer. Experience in the UK, the United States and Auckland shows us this. Building more and more roads in congested areas on many occasions results in more congestion, more traffic jams, more time and money wasted and more pollution." And if he doesn't agree with Mr Williamson, where is the evidence that he's got to show that Mr Williamson was wrong?
The Hon STEVEN JOYCE.
Mr Speaker, the member doesn't seem to understand that there is no argument at all on this side of the House that a multimodal passenger solution for Auckland is what's required. There is needs for roads because at the end of the day, 84% of New Zealanders travel to and from work each day via the road. But there is also need for public transport, particularly in our largest cities.
Dr Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Has the Minister not seen the numbers about how people travel to work, the dramatic increases in the numbers of Auckland up 18% in 2008, the bus up 7% in 2008, proving that Aucklanders will choose to use public transport if this government, which will become a government of gridlock if he doesn't take action, if this government will allow ARDA to get on and build the public transport we need?
The Hon STEVEN JOYCE.
Mr Speaker, as I said before, we do support passenger transport in Auckland, but we do need to keep some sense of perspective. The numbers of passengers travelling to and from work by public transport in Auckland has been around 6%, and it's moving steadily towards 8%, and therefore you have to still invest in other modes to get people to and from work safely.